Well, we're part 2 here in our sermon series about questions that you asked us to preach about. In the spring, we surveyed the congregation. We got hundreds of questions. We saw some trends, and we narrowed them down to 3 last week. What is God in our church? Next week, what is the afterlife? And this week, how do I talk to my family about coming to the Unitarian Church? More specifically, the question was, how do I talk to my non-liberal family about coming to the Unitarian Church? I feel a little bit in response like the chaplain in the 1970 film Patton, when General Patton called the chaplain in, played by George C. Scott, and he demands a prayer to end the snowstorm that is inhibiting the U.S. troops. The chaplain says, "It would take a pretty thick rug for that kind of prayer, General." To which Patton says, "I don't care if it takes a magic carpet. Have that prayer on my desk in the morning." The request for a prayer to stop a snowstorm might be akin to asking me for an answer for your family's concern about you coming here. It might not have the magic to cure your familial concerns, but it is what you do with it that matters. I also want to acknowledge the pain in the question. I feel the struggle that comes when conversations put us on the defensive, especially when we want to be in a loving position with those we are related to or in relation with. I know something about this, not much from religion, being protected from those concerns by my choice of profession, but rather in politics, of which none of us are protected from the divisiveness these days. We know the feeling of checking our beliefs about our political realities, because we probably do it every day. Not assuming anyone in here is on one side or the other of these divisive issues, we are all feeling this. And we know the feeling of being questioned for our truths, because it is par for the course in America today. To address the question of speaking to family, and I add friends, I assume the question really is, how do I not check my faith at the door of my fundamentalist, non-liberal family and friends' homes? I think that's the subcontext. Now, I have to say a few things first. One, I don't have any non-liberal family. It is not to say that I don't have disagreements with them, but some of my family are more progressive and more radical than I am. We generally agree when it comes to faith. But I just returned from vacation with them, and I spent no time trying to convince them that my Unitarian Universalism was legitimate because of their more conservative religious views. Rather, I spent time trying to convince them that religion at all has value in the face of their fundamentalist atheism on the other side of the coin. So I get the question, and I understand from a deeper place of feeling guarded about my views from time to time, that the divisions among friends and family that form over disagreements, political or religious, is painful. What I hear in your question is like the pain present in the reading this morning, when the young woman who describes herself as bleeding heart says she feels ganged up on by the people she loves for her choices. Our families and friends are split by divisions that make things feel unsafe, make things feel like we must live in fear if we speak our truths. In the podcast from the reading that Aaron read, Cheryl Strayed, who is an author you may know, responded to the inquiry like this. She said, "There's a reason for the old adage that you don't talk about religion or politics. You know, those are two areas of life that people feel very passionately about. Many people, they don't feel that their identity is even separate from their religious beliefs or their political values." She goes on, "I certainly feel that way about my own political values. And I don't enjoy arguing with people. I don't want to persuade anyone to agree with me, nor do I want to be persuaded." She says, "You are not going to convince your parents, bleeding heart, to vote for anyone but who they want to vote for. And the same is true, they are not going to convince you. So give it up," she says. "That is my advice. Sometimes silence is really the most loving solution." To which her co-host responded this way. "I agree with that," Steve Allman said. "What I want to say, though, is there's something powerful in you saying, I used to feel comfortable sharing my views and beliefs. And I think it's part of you that connects to your parents, who even in this conservative environment were pro-choice and supportive of gay rights, doing the work in education. And at the center of this," he says, "this happens so often when the political becomes personal, or we might say when the religious is personal. He says it's a kind of mourning of a loss. There's some part of you saying, what happened to those parents? I hope somehow you can hang on to some way of connecting with them," he says. That does involve some sort of shared values," he says. "But it may be that it's not this election season that's going to happen. And then you have to just make peace with that." A softer response. I would guess that when you ask us how to talk to your non-liberal families, the wedge that divides us has different shapes and sizes. There is a spectrum that you are describing in this problem. That spectrum ranges from they are praying for you because you come here, on the one hand, all the way to they know you are wrong and sinful and make the world a worse place with your choice. Here's the thing. The former, I'm praying for you, comes from a place of love. I pray for you is not a cutting off, but a you are on my heart-mind response. To which I say, the more people who pray for me, the better. It means they care. But seeing you as corrupted and unredeemable and sinful and damaged for a faith that you choose is not love. It is a denial of your truth and your being. The former we can thank our families for. The latter makes us mourn. Makes us mourn the cracks in our relationships. Mostly because our families are supposed to be where we cooperate and hold each other. The latter, whether it is political, like in the reading, or religious, like in your question, often and unfortunately asks the question of whether we can be a family at all, which is a painful question. Joshua Green, who wrote a great book, I believe. He's a sociologist and psychologist at Harvard. The book is called Moral Tribes, says this. Familial love is more than just a warm, fuzzy thing. It's a strategic biological device, a piece of moral machinery that enables genetically related individuals to reap the benefits of cooperation. Green says that at the age of 6 months, long before we can walk or talk, human infants are making value judgments about actions and agents reaching out to individuals who show signs of being cooperative, caring about others, and passing over individuals who do the opposite. What he is saying is that when our families feel like enemies, when the ability to cooperate is broken, when we fail to see each other's worth and value, we all fail. And religion, like race or political affiliation, takes on a tribal identity where, from a believer's point of view, our beliefs reflect and reinforce a perceived knowledge of a universal moral order that, for whatever reason, members of other tribes have failed to appreciate. And this is a dangerous and damaging perception that sets us up against them. So when our ideas of an absolute moral order are challenged, like the parent who sees your coming here, or the family that sees your coming here as a challenge to their understanding of a moral order, when religions then reinforce that world of us over others, the mountain of cooperation and affection and familial peace is hard, if not impossible, to climb. And that is why it is painful to witness the divisiveness in our world, especially in our families and with our friends. But you asked, how do I talk to my non-liberal families in this context? So let me try my prayer on you, General Patton. Here are some munitions in the arsenal of our faith that state our truth without trying to bunker us in an absolute truth. Unitarian Universalism is a big tent, we say. But we also say that you can't be a Unitarian Universalist and believe that one religion encompasses the elusive final truth for all time and place. We're a living tradition, not one that believes we just need to hold fast to an absolute truth that already was discovered a millennial ago. We are a religion with a robust religious pluralism that explicitly includes Jewish and Christian traditions. See our fourth source of faith on the list of purposes and principles. It says Jewish and Christian teachings which call us to respond to God's love by loving our neighbors and ourselves is a source. So what we're saying is we are a big tent. We don't agree to an absolute truth, but we have our roots in the Jewish and Christian sources. Why? And that is the most important thing, because they are grounded in love. At the roots of who we are that we make legitimate claims that God is love. Deeper than all the nonsense of stories and text and all what we want to attach to our understanding of faith and religion is the root of love. You can tell your families we come from these sources, but we aim to know and practice love as a way to the holy. That's one piece. You can tell them, and in our church, you can believe many different views about the world, even about the next world. And this is where I lean a little bit toward next week's sermon. But you cannot hold the view that salvation is to be found solely beyond this world. We have a long-standing tradition in Unitarian Universalism in valuing this world and this life, and that here and now really, really matters. Salvation is what we do with this life to make the world better, not something we agree to and receive after death. That's the second piece. You can tell them that Jesus matters to us also. But no one book tells us the truth, and no one story, even Jesus' story, is the only source. Our faith doesn't look to Jesus for salvation. We look to his example among other sages to show us the way to the heart of love. That's another piece. And you can tell them that we believe in our capacity to sin. Yes, we understand that. But that here we do not hold the view that we are essentially sinners in need of redemption. Here we understand that at the very core of every human being who has ever lived and ever will live is a soul that wants to connect with love, but may not be capable of it, and thus sins. But to see one as a sinner at the core is not how we aim to meet each other in the world, because it makes a difference how we trust, how we believe in our ability to make the world a better place, how we meet each other if we see each other as sinners or essentially good at the core. These are theories that prop up our faith. And if I had to describe us this way, I'd be leaning much more on what theological roots there are in our church, but I would tell people when they asked about our church stories. And here's just 3 that I would tell them. I would tell them about how our youth go on mission trips also. But they don't go to convince others we are right about religion. Rather, they go to places like the Arizona border to learn from everyone there what is happening in immigration. And they return touched and wiser. I would tell them about the woman I buried this week, a member for 67 years who came here 4 days before her 28th birthday in 1952. With 2 children and an alcoholic husband, looking for people to love her into reality. And here she found women of color leading integrated classrooms. She found she was asked to expand her heart and mind and learn things from the great books, and she heard ministers preaching love that extend far beyond what we believe in. And I would tell them about how this church marches against gun violence, is building a new space for community dialogue, calls gay and straight ministers, has performed same-gender marriages for 40 years, was the home of the Roe v. Wade case because its women believed it was right to have agency over their bodies, and invites the presence of God, the God of love, every time 2 or more are gathered, here or elsewhere, just like other churches. And if I didn't have time to tell those kinds of stories, and I know you have your own stories, I would say, like my friend, Reverend Kathleen McTeague says, if you hunger for a spirituality without dogma, if you long to put yourself to work healing a suffering world, if you want a faith community that helps you deepen into life's questions, even when there are no final answers, Unitarian Universalism may be your religious home. Or to your families, this is our home. Friends, if you talk to your non-liberal families or friends, it is like a prayer in a snowy wind during an impossible war. It may or may not do anything to tell them what you are or who you are, if they see you as somehow corrupted and sinful. But at least you can speak your truth. At least you know that within you, as our hymn just said, is a deeper truth and a deeper love. And as the poet said, speak your truths with your lips, speak your truths with your ears, speak your truths with your hands, and I say your hearts and your whole selves. And if you do that, they will feel your reason for coming here. You can show them with integrity that we are about love, living authentic spiritual lives, serving others, finding ways to help the world while we hold each other in esteem. And you can invite them to come be with us and see what is happening here for themselves. Because they too will be invited to speak their truth. And we will receive them in love. Because in the end, our faith is not created to feed divisions or the divisiveness that our world seems to feed on today. Our faith is created to heal divisions. That is what you can tell your non-liberal friends and family. And then I suggest you pray for them. And you love them into being. Amen.